I'm Monique, and it's time to make earrings. Now I know, you think, haven't we made earrings before? And I'm like, yes, these are polymer clay earrings with flowers though. So we need to make them. And you think, well, how many times do we need to make earrings? And I'm going to tell you, just one more, or two more, or a bunch more. We're going to keep making things. Anyway, let's make some earrings. It's important when you start that you condition your clay in order for you to be able to make earrings that are going to not have hard, yucky edges or not even work. So if you have access to the pasta roller, roll it through there until it gets soft and the edges start to be smooth instead of crackly. If you don't have access to the pasta maker, you can just do it with your hand. You can knead it in your hand. So this first earring pattern is going to have 3 pieces, a light, a medium, and a dark. So first pick out your light and your dark and then cut them out into the shapes that you want. When you're going to make that middle color, start with maybe 1/3 of the dark color to 2/3 of your lighter color, because it's easier to add a little more dark than it is to add a whole lot of the light color to get to the color you want. And then cut out the shape you want for that middle piece. There you go. Those will be good. And then remember to put holes in them to do the jump rings. These are going to be on a post, so that where it attaches to your ear doesn't need a hole, but then you need a hole to attach each of the pieces to the next piece. So 1 in the top, 2 in the middle, and 1 in the bottom, so that you can jump ring all of these 3 pieces together. Okay? And of course you're going to do the second one, so that you're ready to put them together. This clay is easy to use, but there, look how fun those are. All right, the second pattern that we did, we made this marble effect. So the important thing is that you condition your colors before you put them together, because if you don't condition them and you roll them together a lot, you just end up blending them instead of making this marble look out of them. So this earring has going to have a stud, a circle on the top with the stud, and then it'll have a hole in the top one and the next one, so that we can jump ring them together so that upside down U kind of dangles around without it having to be on a fish hook. So 1 hole in each of these pieces. Put it as close to the edge as you think you can, so that you don't have to have giant jump rings. There are those. Okay, now to make these flowers. I don't want to use the word booger to talk about what size you should make your little pieces of clay, so we're going to use rice for this one. These are like little rice size pieces, not boogers. Booger, that's gross. Rice size pieces of clay that you're going to use to make the flower petals. So once you have enough pieces for how many you want, it doesn't matter, whatever you think you're going to like, but once you have enough pieces, you stick them on there, and the shape that you make on them while you're working, that is the shape. It's not like cookie dough that changes when you bake it. It stays the way you made it once it's baked. It just gets hard. So whatever shape you make, that's with the tool or with the clay, that's the shape it's going to be. So each of these little rice pieces makes a flower petal. And then we make snakes, for lack of a better term. You know, like when you play with your kids and you have Play-Doh snakes. That's like playing with your kids. When you have Play-Doh snakes. So make snakes, but then that pointy end can be useful for things to taper away. So use the snakes, which are super tiny, to make the stems. And for this flower, it's also going to be snakes to make the leaves, like a, I don't know, daffodil looking leaves or something, long skinny kind of leaves. But we're going to flatten them a little bit for the leaf, but the stem we want to be round, because we're going to just use 1 color. So a stem, if you get it in your head when you get started, you can make a right and a left earring, because that makes us feel better that they're right and left. But if you get done and you realize you didn't make right and left, then you didn't make right and left. Who is going to come up and look at you and be like, those earrings would have been cute, but they both are your flowers leaning the right way? Nobody's looking at that. So just make them and be glad. There we go. And then we're going to add 1 more little bit of yellow to make the center. How fun are these different ones that look like little flowers? All right, this last one. I like these silicone tools. That one's kind of a paintbrush shape, but I find them helpful to make the flowers. This time I use 2 colors together and I blend them a little like we did when we made the earrings that had the marble look. Blend them a little. That is 2 sort of rice-sized pieces of clay, and that makes a kind of a big flower petal. Not too big, but those are kind of big. If you want to make the little bitty delicate ones, you should use smaller boogers. No, not boogers. You should use sesame seed size pieces of clay to make the smaller ones. These would have been good with, these were rice size and they're fine. But if you want the delicate little ones, you need something that's more like a sesame seed size piece of clay when you start. When I work, I like to have a palette of clay out in front of me that I can pick from and get the different colors that's already conditioned, so that while I have something in mind, I don't have to stop. So I had a couple of greens ready, and so I put the dark one on first, and then I used a brighter green. I didn't like it. That's amazing about this clay. You just take it off. And when you put this clay together, just touching it a little is enough. It doesn't, see, that wasn't really attached very much, but when it was baked, that would have stayed. So there, I'm flattening out a little piece to make more like a leaf instead of the stem for my flower. So that's pretty easy. The middle piece I put a little texture to so that it's different from the petals. When you're doing some things, you want to be careful that your fingerprint doesn't leave marks in the clay. But with the flowers, that can actually add a little bit more interest to them to have that texture of your fingerprint on them. So that's different. So these are all done that same way. This last one though, those were done with the piece of rice size piece of piece of clay. Stop saying booger. These are made from something that's more like a sesame seed size piece of clay to start with. And so there's 2 colors that were mixed together, but only a little. They weren't blended until they became a solid uniform color. They were just blended enough so that you had the 2 colors at the same time to show up in the flowers. So some stems out of a dark green, some leaves out of the dark green, and then a second green that's a little bit lighter to also make some leaves to give this a little more dimension on this little 3 flower configuration of clay. Just very lovely, very fun. Flowers are very forgiving. If you don't like it, it's easy to change it a little, and they don't have to be exact to be flowers. As long as they're close, we know they're flowers. There you go. Okay, I know that yours turned out beautiful, and I know that you used tiny little pieces of clay like rice or sesame seeds, not anything else. No other description would do. Anyway, I hope yours turned out great. And I want to remind you that King David, when he wrote in the Psalms, I think he wrote this one, he wrote a lot of them, he said, "Lord, your testimonies are always reliable. Holiness adorns your house for all days to come." I hope to be in that house someday and see all the amazing adornments that honestly are going to make my earrings look kind of sad, but I'm just glad I get to create. I hope you created something fun too. See ya.